Good morning. I'm Bill Carpenter. I'm a senior program analyst here at the Information Security Oversight Office. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to the 2015 ISOO Open House. I hope that those of you who were able to participate in this morning's tour of the public display areas had a good experience. If you were not able to participate, I hope you'll be able to spend time at lunch or at the conclusion of today's program to explore the exhibits. Now, the intent of today's event is to provide an introduction to the many functions and responsibilities of ISOO, and to provide opportunities for conversations between and among all of today's participants. The order of events is as follows. After introductory remarks by the Archivist of the United States, David Ferriero, and after ISOO Director John Fitzpatrick discusses the mission, vision, and values of the office he leads, ISOO's Associate Directors for Classification Management, Controlled Unclassified Information, and Operations will provide overviews of their programs. After lunch, we have two sets of breakout sessions, which will cover in greater detail developments in the Controlled Unclassified Information Program, ISOO's Liaison Program, as well as topics in classification, declassification, and industrial security. Details about the locations and content of these sessions can be found in your brochure you picked up outside. Finally, the afternoon will conclude with a panel discussion in this room by ISOO's Director and Associate Directors. This afternoon, you will have many opportunities to ask questions of the presenters. The presentation materials used today, furthermore, will be made available after the event on ISOO's website, archives.gov/ISOO. I now have the honor of introducing David S. Ferriero, the 10th Archivist of the United States. Mr. Ferriero was confirmed as the Archivist on November 6, 2009, and since then has led the archives through a structural transformation designed to better position our agency to meet its obligations as the nation's record keeper and information manager. With English literature degrees from Northeastern University and a master's from the Simmons College of Library and Information Science, and having served as a Navy hospital corpsman during the Vietnam War, Mr. Ferriero came to the archives after leading the New York Public Libraries as its Andrew W. Mellon Director and leading the libraries of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Duke University. Please join me in welcoming David Ferriero.
Thank you, Bill. It's nice to see you with your clothes on. Bill passed me this morning running on the mall. So welcome to my house. It's nice to have you all here. Let me tell you a little bit about us in the building. John Russell Pope, the architect, designed this building as a temple to American history. He believed only a monumental building in his beloved neoclassical style could appropriately showcase the most treasured documents of our democracy. He made the National Archives taller than the neighboring structures, surrounded it with a moat, and set it at an angle to emphasize the importance of the building to the American people. He wanted everyone to know that records matter. Today, our core mission is the same as it was the day we were created in 1934. We collect, protect, and provide access to the most important government records. That's about 2 to 3% of all the records created by the government over the years, but they're the ones with long-term historic and legal interest. Today, that collection translates into about 12 billion sheets of paper, 42 million photographs, miles and miles of film and video, and more than 5 billion electronic records, the fastest growing form. These records include the oaths of allegiance signed by George Washington and his troops at Valley Forge, the Louisiana Purchase, the check for $7.2 million with which we purchased Alaska, as well as the tweets that are being created in the White House as I am speaking. We are in 44 locations across the country, not just in the Washington area, and this includes our massive National Personnel Records Center in St. Louis, 13 presidential libraries, and 12 regional locations. So let's talk about the Information Security Oversight Office, ISOO, and why is ISOO part of the National Archives. The National Archives is the one agency in the federal government that has at its heart the responsibility to make information about government available to the American people. Many other agencies collect and analyze information, the Census Bureau of the Department of Justice and the Central Intelligence Agency, to name a few, but they do so in pursuit of their own specific missions. The National Archives' purpose is to make information available. It makes sense then that for the National Archives to be closely linked to the most significant reasons why information is protected from public access and the reasons those protections are someday rightfully removed. What the Information Security Oversight Office does by implementing the President's executive orders concerning classified national security information and controlled unclassified information may seem far removed from preserving the Declaration of Independence and running a research room. In fact, ISOO's mission is at the heart of NARA's mission to drive openness, cultivate public participation, and strengthen democracy through public access to high-value records. Without standard processes to manage classified and controlled information, access to that information will simply not happen, either for government users who need that information now or for the public at the appropriate time. And we simply cannot do it without you and your agency's efforts to implement this guidance and process information so that the American people can appreciate what your agencies do in the national interest. There are a few things I hope you will take away from this open house today: the status of ongoing ISOO initiatives, how you can interact with us through the ISOO Liaison Program, and quite up to the minute, the strategy for implementing controlled unclassified information. ISOO has much planned for you today, so I challenge you to follow your interests in today's programs and make that list of takeaways even longer. Thank you for participating in the open house, and I hope you'll have some time to wander around the building and check out the Charters of Freedom, a very powerful experience if you've never been in the Rotunda before, and experience our new exhibit, Spirited Republic, Our Relationship with Booze.
Thank you, Mr. Ferriero, for the opening remarks. I now have the pleasure of introducing ISOO Director John Fitzpatrick. Mr. Fitzpatrick has been with us since August 2011, when the President approved his appointment to the position. He is a graduate of the College of William & Mary and served in a number of capacities in the Central Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office. Right before he came to ISOO, he was the Assistant Deputy Director of National Intelligence for Security at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, where he also led the executive branch efforts to transform the security clearance process, and where he was awarded the National Intelligence Distinguished Service Medal in 2011. Please welcome ISOO Director John Fitzpatrick.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, David, for your remarks, for lending us your house, and the time that you're going to spend with us today. I'd like to thank Bill Carpenter, not only the man who needs no introduction, the man who got no introduction. He's going to be our MC for you today and later in the breakout sessions. Also, as you'll hear more about those later today and are detailed in your program, he's our ISCAP team lead, and you have the opportunity to go listen to initiatives that have been occurring and will continue in the ISCAP program. So thank you, Bill. I'd like to also thank you for taking your time to join us today. Here in the midst, as we close up, actually, Public Service Recognition Week, we take the opportunity to congratulate you on your public service. Thank you for your public service. And to do so in the presence of the Charters of Freedom, with a reminder at noon or shortly after today with the flyover you'll hear more about, you probably know about, that's going to happen just outside, I'll say we're under the steps of the Constitution side of the building, but just over there, over the mall. Reflect a little bit about my own public service. We had an award ceremony yesterday, and a number of things were acknowledged here in the archives, and people were acknowledged for their years of service. And it happened that yesterday was the anniversary of my first day in government. And as I think about things, I feel like I chose to come to the National Archive 4 years ago. But thinking about how long ago it was, I think maybe I was accessioned here. And that's okay by me. So let's see, I have the clicker, so let's move along. I'm going to talk to you about ISOO and why we do what we do and how much that relies on, on our interaction with you. And I think here, just to talk about very quickly these three words on our title here: protect, inform, assess. These are integral to our functions, but as we will make clear throughout the day, our functions are only here to participate, partner, and enhance with those that you provide. So keep that context in mind all day. We're going to talk about us, but really it's not about us, it's about you. So why an open house? We have a couple of objectives, and I hope that they are yours as well. We know each other well. The executive branch has largely had the shape that it's had for a very long time. ISOO has had its role in it for 40 or so years, and so things can get, we can get used to you and you can get used to us, and that's not always the best thing when the world around us is changing. And what we want to do is interact with you to understand how your programs are affected by the programs that we, on behalf of the President, oversee, and how we can do what we do better so that it improves the service that you provide and of course, the ultimate end goal, which is service to the American people. So we hope while we've been in this relationship a long time, today can be the start of something in terms of a renewed set of interaction. And our activity with our liaison program, and you have an opportunity in the afternoon to meet and greet and hear about improvements in our liaison program, are aimed specifically at that. We want to hear from you. I think we have had an opportunity for you to submit questions. If I recall correctly, we were going to have those at the entrance, and you can find one of us from ISOO. If you have something that you need to know, you can certainly run up to us and grab us by the lapels and say, hey, I've always wondered this. Our breakouts today that are on the agenda and upstairs are topically centered, and you have an opportunity to interact with folks there. You can get a copy of your favorite executive order, and I'm sure one of us will autograph it for you. There's a more important signature on every one of them, but we're happy to add ours as well. But we want to hear from you, and we want to make sure that as we sit here at the archives and interact with you in our policy development and learning and other environments day to day, that we have the most accurate sense of what your challenges are and how we can help you with those. And we hope that you will learn. We certainly expect to learn what are your concerns, what are your challenges, what are things that we can do better. But we also know that the things that are changing around us and that put our existing programs and new programs, put our existing programs through changes and put new programs on the books, those changes are important. They affect your everyday, and how we provide guidance, clarification, or help to revise longstanding policies to reflect how you do your business every day. That's what's important for us to learn, and so your real world should help us, help guide our actions and interactions. So every organization's got its mission, and that's assigned to it in some formal way. And that mission has connections to the people that it serves. So we serve the American people, all of us together as public servants. We serve you as executors of the programs that we have a role in guiding. And we serve our own workforce to make sure that ISOO is poised to do what it needs to do as best we can, and that the members of the ISOO workforce can succeed. So all of that's wrapped up in every mission, vision, values thing you've ever done. And we've done a little soul searching ourselves, if you will, over the last period of time. And today is a result of that activity. As we went through and refreshed our mission and vision and values, one theme that kept coming up is our connection to you. Our purpose is to help connect these sometimes very arcane policies, regulations, executive orders. These are not the reasons that we come to work today. They guide what we do, but the reason we come to work every day is because we're invested in the national security, the national interest, and the American people's interests. And that starts with what we can do for you. We are part of the National Archives, and one of the archive's overarching goals is to make access happen. And so to the degree that the programs that we help to oversee and execute protect the information that should be protected, but only that information, and only that information for as long as it needs it, those then enhance and improve the access of the American people into the activities of their government. And that happens not because we say so, but it happens because what you do and your coworkers do and your agencies do in the execution of their mission do it in a way with these principles in mind. And so, yes, we have rules and regulations and assessments to periodically check on how it is agencies are doing in that regard, but the goal of those things is not the assessment or the policy, but the goal of those things is the outcome, and that outcome that's in the interests of the American people. Our values also reflect this connection to you. Some of them are shared. Some of them are values that I'm sure are parts of your organization, certainly the national security for the great majority of us here. That is the business line that we are in, or that is the part of our agency's mission that we are most closely associated with. So that is ours, and that is yours as well. Public trust, the controls on the information the government has is placed in, the public placed trust in us and our agencies to be responsible with those controls, to not overuse them. And so we have that as a shared value. But again, as I said in our soul-searching exercise, our value is your needs. Our constituents' needs include and are probably dominated on a time-of-day basis the activities of our government agency partners. You are not our only constituents. Your constituents, others of yours, are also ours, whether that is cleared industry. We have a large stake and interaction with the industrial partners that help your agencies execute your national security missions. They are our constituents and yours. The public advocacy groups that exist here in Washington for increasing transparency, reducing the overuse of government secrecy. These are, we are sometimes at odds with them on a particular point, but we are not at odds with them on their objective, which has a reasonable place in the protection of information. At some point, rightfully, that protection will go away as the national security and the national interests permit. So these are important parts of our values, and our connection to you is essential in making them come true. A couple of things specifically that we're aligning our activities with. One is to provide you the guidance that you need, right? So the President put ISOO and the responsibilities in ISOO so that these programs that we have, that you'll hear more about today, whether that's classified national security information, controlled unclassified information, the National Industrial Security Program, or the information sharing programs that happen with our state, local, and tribal partners, all of those programs and responsibilities are our responsibility to provide the best possible guidance to you and to make that guidance and its rationale clear to the American people. And so part of today, the educational part of today, and the listening to your challenges part of today are aimed at us understanding what guidance you need, us understanding what the current guidance says and how it might need to be changed or revised or improved to get us where we need to go. In particular, when we write something new, then that is, I'll just say, extra double important. So in addition to all of the occasions that we have today, one of them, I'm very proud to say, this morning the Federal Register, and this is such a policy geek kind of thing to celebrate, but we're going to do it anyway. Today's the first day of the public review and comment phase for the proposed rule on controlled unclassified information. Yeah, that's it. We're going to have, like baseball cards for all the people that have played a part in this. This one was the #1 editor, or this was the... So that is a stage in our process of making something that you have always been doing. This information has always been in your agency's trust, and it's been part of your agency's mission and these programs to control this information. But we've got new guidance from the president, and how we make that apply every day. What are the reasonable steps that everybody can take? It's a challenging thing to write that down in a way that everyone will agree that that's the way it needs to be written and explained, but we've done that. And so for us today, it's like we've reached base camp on the way to Mount Everest, right? It's a tough slog. We've got a lot more to go, but just getting there means that we're well on our way. So in a little bit, Pat Viscuso is going to walk you through the parameters of the program and where we are right now. The other function that we do, we collect information from you about your programs, analyze that information, and report it. We report it to the president, and we report it to the American people. The annual report, we used to have multiple annual reports in ISOO. One of our objectives that we've achieved is to consolidate the collection and analysis stages of that information so that we have one annual report that represents all of ISOO's activities, classified information, controlled and classified information, the costs of having these security systems in government, and National Industrial Security Program, ISCAP, and so forth. So all of these things, we look forward to, in just a few weeks' time, having this year's, the 2014 calendar year's, fiscal year's report out for everyone. I make jokes. I made the joke on the way in. The time of year I came into ISOO, we had just weeks or a month before published the annual report, and so I got to experience the way the world reacts to that. And so what I joke about is that we publish that report, and the press promptly rolls it up and hits us over the head with it. There are important facts that we collect from you that reflect the status of your program. Whatever that status is might be cast in a light that says too much of this, not enough of that. But what's important is year after year, we take an objective review and say, here's what is happening right now. Those performance measures that we collect from you are reflections of your programs and activity. And we consider that, a trust between us. So we're not concerned with whether or not the news service spins the total cost number the right way or the wrong way, although we like it to be the right way. But we are concerned that we can stand up and say, here's what these numbers mean, here's how they came to us. The changes mean these things. If there's a big up in a budget number, expenditure number, then we're asked to say, why is that and what does it mean? And does that explanation make sense? And we think that it does, and we look forward to putting that information out for the American people and for you, and we encourage all of you to review that report when it comes and to circulate it to your peers. Last thing I want to say is to say we are purposeful about what we do. As I said, our event today was formulated to reflect the sort of a cohesive ISOO program and its dependence on you. If you look at this chart and sort of enter it at the 9 o'clock spot, you can go around this circle and we have this cycle of interaction and the kinds of things that we occupy our time with planning, managing, and executing on a day-to-day basis begin with our understanding of your programs and our ability to be accessible to you, to provide clarification, and to tap into you to find out what's going on in your world. We do that through data calls and other things, but those data calls and other things are healthy because you talk to us, you call us, you email us, and we respond. We do, our middle name, I like to remind people, our middle name is Oversight. There is an uncomfortable aspect of somebody coming into your space and pulling open a drawer or talking to your boss or asking questions that are in some way boiled down to, are you doing the things that you're supposed to do? Yes, that can be an uncomfortable thing. The purpose is not to be to create an uncomfortable ripple in any relationship, but to say, hey, the challenges you are having in these things, we can observe other agencies having as well. Here's what we think collectively everyone can do about that, and next year, hopefully, we will get better. We get in turf battle. We don't. We try to avoid it, but every government agency, every interagency dynamic has a little bit of my turf, your turf associated with it, and we try not to make things about the authorities. Because, as I like to say, every department and agency head can stand up and say, hey, look, I have a letter from the president too. I have instruction from him that says I need to do these things, and to the best of my judgment, balance all of the resources, challenges, and responsibilities and make for the best outcome. So there's not a win-lose, there's not a gotcha aspect to what we do, or there should not be, but rather a recognition that among all of those responsibilities, every unique department and agency has been given, and it's a challenge. We're there to sort of pick the thread of security and controlled information and say, here is a best practice, or highlight the fact that you have a best practice, or here's an idea from somebody else that might be helpful to you. So those are the things that, that we're about. Somehow I have managed to get this far and not say the word cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, my latest bit on this is simply that everything is cyber and cyber is everything. That strand of both threat or capability or aspect to missions has grown and continues to grow and accelerate. Everything about the information technology space is essential to what we do, and it is also a key part of challenges and threats to what we do. We don't have a lot of specific cybersecurity responsibilities in ISOO. Our responsibilities are to ensure that the information control policies, whichever they are, when they are communicated through IT protection standards, provide an adequate level of protection alongside all of the other requirements that are in our program. So it is one of the tools in the toolkit. There are other experts in government that will tell you the best way to address any of those particular challenges. One of those experts, and perhaps the preeminent one of those experts, Dr. Ron Ross from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, is going to be in this room, 1 o'clock, is it the one right after lunch, to talk about the development of a recent standard that is about a month from being final, that is critical to the overarching FSMA and NIST risk management framework, will fit right on the shelf with those policies as relates to controlling unclassified information in the non-federal space. And so our partners are engaged in I'll say our cybersecurity partners, whether that's in policy and oversight or in execution, are engaged with us, and we are either joining their meetings in their room or inviting them to our meetings in our room to make sure that we address this very important aspect of our program. So with that, I'm going to move it along. Our goal is to give you a top-of-the-waves experience this morning as we go through. You're going to hear from each of the associate directors who are overseeing and guiding the expert staff here in ISOO. You're going to start with Bill Cira. Bill Cira is an Associate Director for Classification Management. He is my personal go-to, my Sherpa for the classification executive order when I have a question. How did something become this way? Why is this way? Bill is expert in that, and his staff as well. You'll have the opportunity to meet and greet all of them along with all of ISOO. So let me turn it over right now to Bill, and we'll keep things moving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John, and good morning, everyone. I just have a brief overview for you of what the classification management staff does here at ISOO. To begin with, we are generally involved in all matters pertaining to classification and declassification when it comes to both policy and oversight. One of our biggest tasks is to produce the ISOO annual report and cost report, which we publish every year. We used to have a team of up to 4 people that used to manage this process, and now we've got it down to only 1, because Peggy Ushman turned out to be so effective and efficient in doing this. It turned out we didn't need anybody more than her to work on that. But this report assembles all the data that you all send us through the SF311 process. I'm sure you're all familiar with that and love that part of your jobs. And then we also roll in everything that ISOO has accomplished over the year or been involved in. And our most recent, our next annual report should be out approximately the end of this month. Our director is also the executive secretary of the Information Classification Appeals Panel, and so we have 6 people that work to support that almost entirely on a full-time basis. And our Master of Ceremonies today, Bill Carpenter, is our team leader of the ISCAP, and he keeps that running extremely well. The director is also the executive secretary of the Public Interest Declassification Board, and until very recently, we had 2 people who used to work on that. So a lot of you might be familiar with John Powers, who has been a fixture around here for the last 7 years. He is in the process of transitioning to a new job at the National Security Council, where he will be the Director of Access Management. So we wish him well on that. And then for the time being, Ellen Knight is our sole remaining PIDB support person. In 2008, we established an on-site review program that focused on the declassification work and processes out in the agencies. And we run this program as a separate and distinct on-site review program from our normal on-site review program that looks at all aspects of an agency's classification program. We started out by visiting 22 agencies in 2008. And sometimes the results were not too good. It was kind of iffy. Between 2008 and 2013, we visited anywhere from 15 to 19 agencies. And over the course of those years, the scores improved dramatically, and people remarked that they learned a lot from our people and that their processes had improved because of it. So right now we're only doing about 5 a year, basically running this on a maintenance basis. A little bit more about the ISCAP, in case you're not familiar with it. The ISCAP was established by executive order in 1995, and it provides a means by which the public can appeal their request for declassification decisions from the agencies through the mandatory declassification review process. But it actually has 4 distinct functions. The first is to act upon appeals pertaining to classification challenges that occur in the agencies. And this doesn't happen very often where a classification challenge rises to the level of the ISCAP, but it does happen at least once or twice a year. The ISCAP also has to review and approve all requests from agencies to exempt classified information from automatic declassification at the 25, 50, and 75-year points. So basically the way it works is the executive order gives the agency to keep, gives an agency the authority to keep information classified for up to 25 years, and theoretically anything beyond 25 years has to be approved by the ISCAP. But our main function is to review requests, appeals on requests for mandatory declassification reviews that had occurred in the agencies when a member of the public sends an MDR to the agency. They might not like the result of what the agency sent back to them, or maybe the agency didn't respond within 1 year. So at that point, the appellant has the ability to appeal their request to the ISCAP. And our last function is, their last function is to form the agencies of ISCAP decisions. So This is something that we started a couple of years ago. We now have an online database of all the documents that the ISCAP has processed within the last couple of years, and they're out there as a way to both inform the public and also inform the people in the agencies of what type of ISCAP decisions are being made, and in the hope that they can be guided on that in their own declassification process. Just as an example, in FY 2014, the ISCAP decided on 48 MDR appeals. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a year's worth of work. So they are very time consuming and very manpower intensive. There were 451 documents included in those 48 appeals. And during the process, the ISCAP affirmed agency declassification decisions in 25% of the documents, 40% in their entirety, and they declassified 40% in their entirety, and they declassified 35% in part. And since the inception of ISCAP, the panel has acted on a total of 1,960 documents. And it's difficult to keep up with the amount of work that comes in on that. I mentioned that we resolved like 48 in 2014, but we probably received, I think it was over 100. So. Then we have the Public Interest Declassification Board. So this board is an advisory group created by Congress in 2000. It's composed of 9 individuals, who most of whom have been previously senior level members of the government or their equivalent in the private sector. And their purpose is to promote the fullest possible public access to a thorough, accurate, and reliable record of significant U.S. national security decisions and activities. The board has published a series of reports since its inception. The first was in 2007 when they produced a report called Improving Declassification. This contained 48 recommendations. Many of them were acted upon when the executive order was reissued in 2009. The most significant of these was the creation of the National Declassification Center. In 2012, the board issued another report called Transforming the Security Classification System. And this report provided 14 additional recommendations that focus on transforming classification, declassification, and improving the use of technology in both classification and declassification. Recently in 2014, the board issued another report on the setting of priorities on the declassification process, which was it's a tricky topic because a lot of people said that something like this can't be done. But in any case, they recommended that historically significant records should be identified and set aside as early as possible after their creation to ensure their preservation, long-term access, and availability to agency policymakers and historians. And they also suggest that each agency, at least every large agency, have in-house history staff to assist with the prioritization of records. The last thing I want to talk about this morning is really just a reminder. I'm sure a lot of you remember this or maybe were involved in this, but in 2009, the Executive Order 13526 established for the first time a requirement that every agency with original classification authority conduct a fundamental classification guidance review every 5 years. So we completed, the first one was completed in June of 2012, and which means that the next one needs to be completed by June of 2017. So we've got a couple of years, but it's not too early to start thinking about it. And keep in mind that the executive order calls for a comprehensive review of agency classification guidance, particularly classification guides, and to ensure that the guidance reflects current circumstances. It also suggests direct participation of the officials who have original classification authority, and also any other subject matter experts from both inside and outside the agency that might be available to work on this. In the last go-round, it was reported to us that 3,103 guides were reviewed, 869 were either canceled or consolidated, 52 projects, programs, or categories were either eliminated, revised, consolidated, or condensed. So it sounds like it was very productive, but the order requires us to do it again, so keep that in mind. You'll be getting more information from ISOO on that this coming summer. We'll be putting out some letters on that. At this point, I would like to introduce Dr. Patrick Viscuso. He's one of my fellow associate directors at ISOO. He has almost 25 years in security disciplines at ISOO, the Department of Defense, the intelligence community. He's been with ISOO since 2005, and his present position heading the CUI staff since 2008. His experience includes work at all levels of the Defense Security Service, including on the staff of the Chief Operating Officer.
Well, thank you very much, Bill, for the kind remarks. It's an honor to be here today. I just kind of, looking at the audience, I reflect at how many years, how much knowledge this audience represents. And it's a humbling experience to be before you. And I think of all of the different types of government service you all represent, it's truly astounding. I'm here to talk about something I believe in very strongly. It's the Controlled Unclassified Information Program. I've been working on this program since 2008 under the Bush Memorandum. And I'd like to share with you, and this is a very auspicious day, we've had the proposed federal regulation governing CUI. It's gone for public comment. That's a major turning point for the program, something my whole staff has worked towards. There's 7 of us altogether, including myself, and I think it's a major accomplishment. So what I'd like to do is talk about the program, give you its basic elements, and maybe later on in the hallways and some of the other sessions, we can answer some specific questions and talk to some of your specific needs and concerns. If any of you have had any time within the government or without the government, you probably have encountered certain markings on unclassified information, like sensitive but unclassified, for official use only, law enforcement sensitive. And a GAO report recently cataloged over 100 different markings that are used throughout the executive branch to control this type of information. And I think the important thing to understand, it's not simply markings. There are 100 different systems that lie behind those markings that tell the user what to do when they encounter the marking on the information. And one of the problems with these systems is that they're agency-based. They're based in agency-specific regulation, sometimes not known very well within the agency, and certainly when the information is shared with non-federal partners, for example, they, not having access to this agency-specific regulation, may not know what to do precisely with it. Sometimes it's overprotected, sometimes it's underprotected, and sometimes it's not shared for fear of violating some regulation or some law. And so this has been recognized by successive administrations as a problem, and the Obama administration issued an executive order in November of 2010 to establish a program that would be consistent, uniform, govern the entire executive branch, and speak to how this information should be handled. And the executive order established the National Archives as the CUI executive agent, and the archivist designated the Information Security Oversight Office to exercise executive agent responsibilities. One of the important things about this executive order is that it established the basis upon information being controlled. It established it based on what? Law, federal regulation,
and government-wide policy. Unclassified information that the law, the federal regulation, government-wide policy says to control or to protect, to safeguard, to control the dissemination of, that would be the scope of the information that would fall under the program. Now, when the executive order was issued, it required all of the 153 entities within the executive branch to evaluate what information, what unclassified information it was controlling on the basis of law, federal regulation, and government-wide policy, and submit these information types to our office. We received over 2,200 submissions, which we rifled and shuffled into 23 categories and 82 subcategories of information. Now, if you were to go online today to www.archives.gov/CUI, what would you see in our registry? You would see these categories and subcategories listed, and you would see descriptions of the information that fall under them, and you would have hot links to the law, the federal regulation, and the government-wide policy that tell you, protect this. But that begs a question. What is that question? How do you protect this? And the way that we've approached this, the way the executive order approaches this, is to instruct the CUI executive agent to issue guidance on how to handle this information, but to do so in consultation with affected agencies. And we've been working towards this goal for a couple of years now, consulting with affected agencies in a CUI advisory council. This advisory council is based on the Chief Financial Officers Council, which is constituted of those agencies, I think it's 24 agencies, that control most of the executive branch's budget. Plus we added, for good measure, the President's Cabinet. Plus we added several agencies that control a lot of this information, have very great investment in the program, such as FBI and CIA. And together, we asked a question. And what was that question? How do you control this information today? What is your baseline in controlling this information? And we concentrated on those 4 points that you see up there: safeguarding, dissemination, decontrol, and marking. And we were successful. We were successful in constructing a regulation that is out for public comment today that covers those topics. And so that will answer those questions. How do we protect this information? Now, mind you, there are some laws, some regulations, some government-wide policies that specify how the information should be protected. So that's why we have 2 basic levels of CUI. CUI Basic, which is governed by our regulation in terms of how to handle the information, and CUI Specified. Again, it's governed by a regulation, but the law, the regulation, the government-wide policy tell you the specifics on how to control this information. Now, the question comes up: how is this all going to be implemented? How is this uniform and consistent program going to be implemented by the 153 entities within the executive branch? The executive order tells us that we should be doing it in phases, and it calls upon the CUI executive agent to consult with the stakeholders in this program, the government agencies, to develop phased deadlines for implementation, and to do it in concert with the Office of Management and Budget. And I am happy to report we have the makings of a national implementation plan that we will be issuing at the time that our federal rule is finalized. Given the schedule, given that we will have public comment until July 7th, 2015, we expect this federal rule for CUI to be finalized sometime around the end of this calendar year, and we expect implementation to begin sometime around January. That will be day 0 for us. Day 0 means that agencies will begin to construct their own policies based on the national policy, which will then provide them the basis to formulate training packages, and we will help. We will have modules of some computer-based training modules available that we can share with agencies to give them help in devising this training. And then we will, in that first year, that's what we're looking at, during this first year, these training packages will be used to train the employees of the agencies so that, what are we building towards? So that by that first year, agencies will be able to have their employees at least recognize the markings and receive the CUI and know how to handle it. It's sort of a soft start, but if we have done our job well with the construction of the federal regulation, we will have answered effectively that question, what are you doing now to protect the information? And we would have captured that baseline, and it will be a soft lift for the agencies then to assert their physical safeguarding of the information. But you asked then, I guess, well, what about the IT? That's a big lift, isn't it? In the federal regulation that we are proposing, we are saying that the requirement for protecting controlled unclassified information will be moderate confidentiality. It's a government requirement. Well, agencies upgrade and replace their IT according to schedules. And again, we go back to the executive order. The executive order calls for phased implementation of the program. So according to that schedule that agencies already have of upgrading their IT, replacing their systems, they will then begin to incorporate CUI requirements to meet the requirement of moderate confidentiality, which we understand from reported statistics, almost 70% of government systems are already meeting. This raises a question about how these IT requirements will be translated for the contractor world, because we have proprietary systems there, and the academic world. The systems there already exist. They weren't built according to a government blueprint, according to the NIST standards and guidelines, according to OMB policies. How will this work? We have teamed up with the National Institute of Standards and Technology to produce a special publication, the 800-171, which translates moderate confidentiality for the non-federal environment and does so in a way that's understandable to the information technologists that live within that world. It has gone through one round of public comment already and has been well received. It is going through a second round, which will end on May 12th. We anticipate it being finalized in June. When it is finalized in June, it will be available to government agencies in order to apply these requirements to the information types that are CUI and will be CUI in the future. DoD is our partner in all of these endeavors and plans to do just this, to apply the 171 in this fashion. However, how will this work for the rest of the executive branch with regard to the over 300,000 contractors, grantees, and licensees that are involved in relationships with the government, contracts and agreements? Our intention is to work with the FAR Council, with DoD, GSA, and NASA, who are the architects of the FAR Council, and to construct a universal FAR clause for the executive branch that captures these requirements, and to make this clause available to the 153 entities that comprise the executive branch, so there may be consistent application of the CUI requirements and agreements and understandings and contracts. So I'd like to summarize a bit. I've talked about the origins of the program. I've talked about the scope of information that falls under it based in law, regulation, government-wide policy. I've talked about the consistency that the rule will bring to those types of unclassified information where the law, the regulation, government-wide policy does not specify what must be done with it. And I've also talked about the IT application. The IT application executive branch wide, but also most importantly, how it applies to our non-federal stakeholders and how we intend to devise a FAR clause that will be available to all the agencies within the government. That concludes my overview. I am very happy to talk about this program anytime. Please grab me in the hallways, and also we will have a panel session in the afternoon to address particular questions. It's now my honor to introduce Greg Pannoni, the Associate Director for Operations at the Information Security Oversight Office. I've known Greg for over 25 years. He has over 35 years, or close to 35 years, of service, civil service. His expertise in the National Industrial Security Program is based on his work in DoD at all levels of the department. I think he exemplifies the highest ideals of the civil service. It's my great honor to introduce him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat, for those very kind words. Good morning, everyone. And we've been at this for a little over an hour, so if you want to take a couple of seconds, stand up, stretch, by all means, go ahead. Okay, I think we hit a couple of seconds. So I'm here to talk about the operations and industrial security staff and what we do. And I am going to start just to give you a little short story. A few years ago, I was asked during an interview what I considered to be the most important part of the information security program. Was it classification, was it safeguarding, or was it declassification? I thought about it, and I responded accordingly that classification, since it preceded the other two and consequently drives the requirements for safeguarding and declassification. But subsequently, I thought about that, and I don't think it's any of those that are most important. They are important policy parts. They're essential policy parts to the program. But what I believe is most important is the implementation and review part of the program, Part 5 in the executive order. Because without that, we will never get to the ultimate goal of successful performance in terms of the context of our mission, in part, to only classify the minimum amount of information necessary to protect national security, safeguard it, and then to declassify it as soon as it no longer meets those provisions. So if there's one thing that I'd ask that you take back and you remember from the discussion is simply that your agency's implementation and review of the program will ultimately determine successful performance. So within the operations staff, our focus is, in fact, on evaluating agency and industry performance in the context of the mission of protecting the information. What does that mean? Well, again, appropriately classifying the minimum amount of information to protect our national security and safeguarding it and declassifying it as soon as it doesn't meet those needs. We do this in a number of ways. Some is unstructured, some is structured. The unstructured, we have intermittent contact with all of you and others within your agency to hear about concerns, to partner with you, to find solutions in the most efficient way. We also have a structured approach, and that begins with the, perhaps not begins with, but one of the components of that is the on-site review program that we do, some of the data calls, the self-inspection reporting, which is an annual requirement, and then there's other ad hoc data calls that we do. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of those on-site reviews and how we do them specifically, and the self-inspection, some of the data from that. We also conduct outreach, such as this one today. We participate in conferences, symposium, and that sort of thing, both with government, industry groups, sometimes individually or combined. And we're involved in the policy development, particularly as it relates to the industrial security part of the program. We collaborate with our industry colleagues, the government cognizant authorities, and other government agencies that are affected by the National Industrial Security Program. And that's to update the policies as new policies come on board, such as the Insider Threat Program, or as policies are in need of modification as determined by each of those colleagues. So we operate in part through doing those things through the NISPAC, which is the National Industrial Security Program Policy Advisory Committee. It's a committee that is open to the public. It's a formal process, but at the same time, we have working groups under the committee, and we meet regularly to talk about policies, to hear about concerns that our partners have, and to come up with solutions. Because ultimately, I'm going to emphasize that point, it's all about performance. That's the main issue. And then there's the state, local, tribal, and private sector policy advisory committee. And this is an area where we're trying to advance information sharing in a consistent way, in a robust way with the non-traditional federal partners, those that you see, the state, local, tribal, private sector entities, and that is also an advisory committee that's open to the public. So let's talk a little bit about the on-site reviews. Specifically, what we look at is areas concerning program management, classification activity, education and training records, security violation records and reporting, as well as other reporting requirements. We're looking at information system security, because that's where so much takes place. Practically, as you know, all classified activity, for the most part, is processed within information systems. And I didn't mean to skip over both classification practices and employee interviews, because they're probably the two most important things that we do. And the other area is the administration of the NISP, where applicable, for those agencies that have issued contracts that involve access to classified information in the performance of providing a service or a good to the government. I want to emphasize a little bit the classification activity and interviews, because I think that fits right into the successful demonstrated performance. And where else but an evaluation of the product, the classification product, can we make a definitive statement that we are, in fact, doing what is primary to this program, and that is classifying the minimum amount of information as is needed to protect our national security. And so we do that by reviewing your documents, as you probably know. And we're not just looking at those documents for the purposes of the markings on the documents. That's obviously important. But we're looking at it also because we want to see if, in fact, the documents are appropriately classified. You know, does it make a difference? Is it something that if we didn't classify it, it could reasonably cause damage to our national security? So the other thing that's important is the interviews with people. And I'm just going to grab some water for a second. I apologize, a little stuffy for me in here. It's allergy season. In any event, the interviews, I consider these to be purposeful conversations because, again, just as if with the classified product, we can have the policies in place. We can have the implementing regulations in place. We can have the security education and training programs that are very robust. But ultimately, if the individuals that are responsible for carrying out these responsibilities, if they either are or are not fully efficient in applying and implementing those requirements, we will not achieve successful performance. And that's true of pretty much most things in life, right? No matter what. I mean, you know, I like to use sports analogies because I enjoy sports. Take a football team. They can have all the personnel. They can have good general manager, good coach, excellent playbook, good game plan, but they may not win the game. They may not be successful. And often you'll hear in the post-game interview with the coach, well, we didn't execute the plan. And that's the same type of thing. You know, and part of executing the plan in that case, sometimes it's fundamental things like blocking and tackling. So fundamental things in our program are things like appropriately classifying information, making sure that we are, in fact, only separating that information that would otherwise be available to the American public because of its vital importance to national security. So again, I stressed the interviews. So, and I'm going to pivot here. We're going to talk a little bit about self-inspections. Everything I just said, I believe, is applicable to you in your self-inspection program. We like to think that you can do all the things that we do in our on-site review, and in fact should do as part of your self-inspection program. And I'm a little bit of the bearer of bad news here, but I think, you know, it's better to be upfront about things. Self-inspection program is, again, an essential thing to the implementation and review of your program. One of the things we started about 4 years ago was not just that you conduct a self-inspection program, but that you report on the results of your self-inspection program each year to ISOO. And so we look at the data and we conduct analysis of it. And later today, in one of the afternoon sessions, Bob Scarrott of our staff, who leads the on-site review program, David Bess is leading the NISP program for our staff. Both will have a joint session, and Bob will go further in providing some analytical data about the self-inspection reporting program to include classified document data. But I'm going to highlight a few right here. This one, I think, is a good one to point out because classification challenges is a good check and balance on the system of classification. It is a dynamic program, as we all know. We use words like appropriately classified for a reason. We say may classified for a reason in the order, even if you've met all the standards, because you still would not necessarily have to classify as an OC, original classifier. So the challenge provision, however, is a challenge to all of us. Everyone in this room has a security clearance, I'm sure. And we have an obligation. We're expected and encouraged when we see information that we believe doesn't rise to the level of classification, or it could be the other way around, information that's not classified that we believe needs classification, to, in fact, challenge it. Now, these are formal challenges, but we've been tracking this for about 10 years. The challenge provision has been around since the 95 executive order. But while 813 represents the highest number ever reported, even that number is not as robust as you might think. I want to say hats off to the United States Pacific Command because 578 of those were reported by them. Another 171 was by one other single entity. So you can see, if you just do the quick math, it's about 64 that are left for the rest of the executive branch of the government. Very small numbers. In fact, we average 200 to 300 a year. So this is something that I challenge everyone to, no pun intended, to work on. And another point, in addition, the self-inspection data reveals to us at this time that 1/3 of all the agencies haven't even established a self-inspection, a challenge program. So clearly that in and of itself will not support this being robust as it should be. I could go on and on about it. I will make one other point about this. It works. When we go back to successfully demonstrated performance, this past year, nearly half, over 400 of these 813 did result, and this is really the most important point, in either total or partial declassification of the information that was challenged. So no one can argue that it isn't a good tool that we ought to use. Just quickly, some other items with respect to self-inspection data that I want to kind of put some emphasis on because I think we can do a little bit better. Security, annual refresher security training. We're at about 75% for 90% of employees that require annual refresher briefings. We can give you the 100% number too, but we feel, it's a bit difficult to always say you're at 100% because people are coming and going. But if you just strip out 90%, and we're only, as collectively, all of us agencies, we're at 3/4 on target. So that means, 25% have not briefed at least 90% of their employees on an annual basis. One of the fundamental requirements of the order. Another one that is pretty significant, and the numbers actually are far worse, is in the performance evaluation. There's a criteria that we, as you know, have a critical element for all of us that are involved on a regular basis in the handling, classification of information, and as well as, of course, original classifiers and derivative classifiers. We're only at about 48-50% of the 90%. Okay, so for all the people that required of 90% the requirement that are having to have that requirement, we're only at a little under half have that element. There's a number of others. Bob will touch on those. I've been given the stop sign, so I'd like to continue, but unfortunately, I want to respect your time and the next person's time. So thank you.
Thanks very much. I'd like to take a moment just to thank Greg and Pat and Bill one more time for their presentation. Not only did they meet the 15-minute performance metric, but I think they provided a terrific overview. You can see why I am so pleased to come into work each day and to work with these gentlemen. They are experts, they are leaders, and they lead the ISOO staff through the paces and draw the best out of all the ISOO staff as well. And so my thanks to each of you. So we're going to just talk briefly about the rest of the day and some things for you not to miss. I think you got sort of a tour to the horizon of ISOO. We are, in some respects, a mile wide, and we try to stay only a little bit deep in covering all that territory this morning. There are longstanding established programs that we are continuing to execute in partnership with you. We have a significant new program that we are standing up and in the CUI space. And then in our function for oversight and providing analysis of that, I think you got a taste of there's always an area for us to do better. And our goal is to call that out as an opportunity and to take the kinds of things that Greg provided specific examples of and to give you some depth on that and then some help and point you to the folks that can help you. So as far as the morning, I think those were our goals, and I want to say, am I going in the right direction? Yeah. So the afternoon, you get to drive a little. You get to follow your interests. We have things going on in this room and then in our conference rooms upstairs. So if you're familiar with, whether you're familiar with the archives or not, 2 levels up where the declaration and the rotunda, all of that activity on that level are our conference rooms, and some of the breakout activities will happen there. They are named for founding fathers, and so we will see you variously in the Adams and Washington and Jefferson, and I'm not sure if we're using the Madison room, but stop by the Madison room and take a look. You can follow us going on. We can see right here which rooms we're using. Here at 1 o'clock, Dr. Ron Ross is going to talk about the NIST document and its role, its development, and some of the things that it does. He is a particularly effective, not only is he great at, contriving all of this stuff, but he's terrific at explaining it to folks from a non-technical background. So I encourage you to follow up on that if CUI is your thing. We also have opportunity to meet and greet ISOO liaisons. And so the folks who are designated as the way we work things here, among our liaisons, the executive branch is divvied up on an account basis, if you will, and folks are assigned responsibility to be the first person that you reach out to. You have perhaps met them on the phone or met them in email. Here's your chance to meet them in the Jefferson room. That'll happen at 1 o'clock. We've heard a little bit about the Public Interest Classification Board and the Interagency Security Classification Appeals Panel. You have the opportunity to hear more, and there's very interesting activity going on there, and that's in the Washington room. There'll be a brief break then and a chance for people to move around to the next track. There we will continue our discussion of what we learn about classification and performance and how it is applied day to day in the derivative classification program overview. You'll have, and that's in Washington, that's right here at 2 o'clock, an interesting dive into the CUI registry. So one of the pillars of the program is a public registry that catalogs and showcases any and all of the relevant CUI guidance and the reasons for a category or subcategory being designated or being able to be designated as CUI. So you can stop in and meet the architects of the policy and the registry in the Jefferson room at 2. And then, as Greg was just saying, Bob Scrott and Dave Best are going to walk through the statuses of both the National Industrial Security Program and the self-inspection and reporting aspects of what we do. Then we will be back in here at 3 o'clock. We have an opportunity for Q&A. We've gotten some questions in advance. We've got some typical frequently asked questions and answers. We'll have a panel up here, myself and the associate directors, and then we will wrap things up. We're going to let you go, and so we have a couple of suggestions for you. One level up, there's a cafeteria, and it is modest. And so we have provided this map, I think, in the program of area restaurants should you choose to go out on a glorious day. Right next to, also on that level, however, is the archives shop. This badge will get you anytime today at lunch or after the program, 10% discount on anything that you should like. There are terrific items in there. They might be sold out of the Benjamin Franklin glasses that let you see the secret writing on the back of the Declaration of Independence. That's hard to keep in stock, but you can get so many other things. This map is in your program materials. You can find, just Washington's best hot dog on almost any corner, and then some other places for you to go. We might encourage you to find a place with a window or that lets you take it outside and enjoy it, a place to sit down. And that is because I think it's scheduled to begin at 12:10, and coming from the direction of the Lincoln Memorial, just like the gyrocopter did, a flyover commemorating, and there's a big event, there's a whole morning's event already ongoing this morning at the World War II Memorial, which is also between here and there. So at 12:10, and I believe this is going to go on for the bulk of the lunch hour, it's 30 or 40 minutes planned, the Arsenal of Democracy. So this is a collection of vintage warplanes that are still operational. They are firing up right now or on their way from out in the Dulles Airport area, and they are beginning a tour where they were going to be moving around airport to airport through the summer. And first opportunity is to look up and see them, as I said, beginning at 12:10 today. It is a temptation we're putting in front of you by letting you go. It is a nice day out, although I understand the humidity is on the rise and you're really going to want to come back and drink up some of the air conditioning, and we've got plenty of that. So with that, I thank you for your time and attention this morning. We will see you back here and around here this afternoon, and please, at 3 o'clock, we will wrap things up for the day here. Thanks very much.